So guys, you can imagine how progressive Nigeria would have become if Abiola was allowed to have become president after his victory. You can imagine the success that this country would have gained if they had allowed democracy to have its place. Now, IBB is confessing that he was under real pressure to annul that election, and that was why he annulled it. And see where they've thrown Nigeria into. See where Nigeria is now. Economically, we are not there. Look at our insecurity. The challenge is not showing any sign of abating anytime soon. And all that. These are things that, came up as a result of not having the rightful people in leadership. So Abiola won because they didn't want him to be the one that would sit in Aso Rock. They decided to annul that election. Anyway, people are now saying that IBB actually wanted to transit from a military rule to a democratically elected president. And that was why he didn't want Abiola to have his way. So you find out that the dominance of the North has always been there right from time. They believe that they are born to rule. I mean, the North is born to rule, while the South is born to always be, the slave to
life. This, my confession, went on to come after how many years where that incidents don't happen. What's it be the thing wait for happen in an ideal situation if this thing take happen, if not another country is in a climb? But let me take you to general reaction on this conversation, really.
Well, let me start by saying finally we are happy that IBB has owned up. He has told his own side of what transpired. Unfortunately, Abiola is nowhere, or is not allowed to tell his own. So also, Abacha is not alive to tell his own. And even before now, the late Humphrey Nwosu had continuously insisted that Abiola won the election. He has continuously insisted. And, the only twist to it, which, is sounding strange to the ear, is saying that his second in command annulled the election, or took steps to annul the election without his being aware of it, and that he only got to know about it, and then he had no option than to endorse it. So it simply shows you the kind of characters we have had as leaders in this country. It shows you the mindset of those who have, led this country. Anybody would have expected that while the late Humphrey Nwosu was shouting, even when he was asked to stop announcing the result, he insisted. He put his life on the line to continue to announce the result. One would have expected that, the IBB that is now confessing and acknowledging that June 12 was won by Abiola would also have done the same. But then, for me, the leaders we have are people who think of themselves alone and not about the country and not about the people. But then, let us see how history will treat him henceforth.
All right. So, Ayo, would you like to react to that?
Yes, I want to. And I greet Prince. Good to see you, sir.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir. IBB, I must tell you, is a whole joker, because you had over 30 years now or more. This is an event of between 1993 and 1998. You had over 30 years to talk about this. You did not. You kept. You allowed. Sorry about that. Please, can you hear me clearly now?
It's okay. Yes, we can hear you clearly. Go ahead.
You allowed the political event to play out that made us to continuously have a terrible election in this country since after then, when we were able, and kudos to Nwosu, because a lot of people don't recognize the work that my man did in making sure that why the terrible election, because people blamed him for years, but he did so well to make sure that election hold and it was credible. That was the time that you just line up in front of who you want to vote for, and it worked. It did not. But even
do you think if we adopt that now again, it could work for us better?
Yeah, it could, there's possibility. But even though
Okay, good.
Abiola is dead and many of the people involved are dead, the history books are not dead, and many of us are readers. And I will tell Nigerians to go and read. Many books to read for you to understand the event that transpired. And I'm going to give a little bit of summary. IPB had a plan to move into civilian rulership. That was his major plan. So at the first instance, at the primary election, he cancelled the first one. When it's time for the second one, he and Musa Yaradua, Shehu Yaradua, gave Abiola a vice presidential candidate. IBB gave his own, Musa gave his own, and Abiola did not accept any of them. He went for somebody neutral so that he will not offend the party leader and the president. As at that time, IBB has started having issues. So he had his own plan that the election will not go well so that he can move into civil rule. That he has his own special plan. The problem that happened was that while he was planning, his generals were also planning. The likes of Abacha and co. And their own planning was aggressive. He was strategizing. They were pushing into aggression. So when his own plan, why do we know that he was planning? When the ABN went to court, an unrecognized society went to court to say that the election cannot.
General Ibrahim Babangida today had a book
in the country. IBB allowed them to go for a legal court. Abiola had to go to another court in Lagos to counter that rule. That's why they had to have election. IBB allowed it to happen. He allowed it to play out. He wanted those things to play out so that he can have opportunity, so that there can be chaos, because surprisingly for them, the election was peaceful. Surprisingly, that was the biggest surprise they ever had. That this election was peaceful. There was no issue. So there was no basis for IBB to say that, oh, I have to continue and let me just move to civil rule. The country is not ready for a proper election. When things are peaceful, we cannot pass it and continue the election. But it failed. When that failed, and he could not do that, as at that time, the Abashas and co were doing their plots. And yes, they were threatening him, but they are not the cause. You are the cause by allowing them to undermine the electoral process, by allowing them to go to an illegal court to get an illegal result to say that the election was not going to be a good election, and allowing that to continue to play out while they were practicing. So all this that is doing now is just crying to Nigerians. When you are old and you have a lot of regrets, you are finding a way to die well. IBB cannot in any way be in the good books of this country. History will never ever favor him, even at his death, because he is the one that set the premise for the regular election that we're having in Nigeria today.
All right, so so there's another conversation I want us to get into. Earlier today, stories went around how the chief of army staff was saying that Toji Bello and his likes will be very severely dealt with and all of those. But it wasn't too long when I heard that Toji Bello has resurfaced again and has started tasking communities, in fact, telling them to pay 25 million before they would access their farms. People now say that, is he not the person that they say? In fact, let's watch that video where the chief of army staff said.
Yeah, please.
The chief whip of the Senate. We're on that already. You know the ability to use on the run as we speak. And for everywhere he goes to, for everywhere he moves to, you follow him there. So let him keep running. It's just a matter of time. He will be removed from this place. Thank you.
And we've seen that, and it's really worrisome. And today is in the news that Toji Bello is tasking communities to pay 25 million naira, that he's resurfaced again, and communities are jittery. So how do we explain this, Prince Francis Chilakasa? Oh, apologies. I think you're muted. Go ahead, sir.
All right. You see, I think I've always said this, that the kind of warfare going on between the army and the bandits is not something you fight on the pages of newspaper. It's not something you fight on social media. The battleground is in the northeast and the north central, where these bandits are operating. So when these army chiefs come out and begin to hold press conference, telling you, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, they are far from reality. They are far from where the action is taking place. And it is high time our service chiefs stop parading themselves in front of camera. They should go to the war front and do the needful. When they have achieved success, then you come out and tell us. So we're tired of all this, shenanigans going on with the Nigerian army, going on with the Nigerian police. Everybody just likes to come to the media and tell us, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. What we want is action. If you want to decimate them, go out there and decimate them, and then come back and tell Nigerians, this man has been arrested. Now, the chief of army staff is talking about catching Trujillo. If they arrest him tomorrow, will he not go into the same program of those
in the country? IBB allowed them to go for a legal court. Abiola had to go to another court in Lagos to counter that rule. That's why they were to have election. IBB allowed it to happen. He allowed it to play out. He wanted those things to play out so that he can have opportunity, so that there can be chaos, because surprisingly for them, the election was peaceful. Surprisingly, that was the biggest surprise they ever had. That this election was peaceful. There was no issue. So there was no basis for IBB to say that, oh, I have to continue and let me just move to civil rule. The country is not ready for a proper election. When things are peaceful, we cannot pass it and continue the election. But it failed. When that failed, and he could not do that, as at that time, the Abashas and co were doing their plots. And yes, they were threatening him, but they are not the cause. You are the cause. By allowing them to undermine the electoral process, by allowing them to go to an illegal court to get an illegal result to say that the election was not going to be a good election, and allowing that to continue to play out while they were practicing. So all this that is doing now is just crying to Nigerians. When you are old and you have a lot of regrets, you are finding a way to die well. IBB cannot in any way be in the good books of this country. History will never ever.
those who have been rehabilitated, will he not go into it? Will he not become somebody who has repented and will be reintegrated into the society? So long as we have a system that does not punish a crime, these people will not stop. I've told you the other day that somebody I know was kidnapped and they paid ransom, but the police will come out and tell you no ransom was paid. If they have to come to the media, whether electronic, whether print media, whether social media, come and tell Nigerians the true situation of things.
All right, thank you.
All this propaganda on the media space should end.
Thank you. Comrade Ayo, please, would you like to chime in on that very quickly?
Very sad. to portray what Prince just said, a colleague, a friend was kidnapped. I tried helping through the process, the police and all that. The police were powerless. They couldn't do anything. They couldn't go. But he had a source in the army, and the source in the army called the army central in that location. He said they cannot go. Guess what? Just after that conversation had concluded, the kidnappers called and told him, "You dey call me Abi?" I hope you understand what I'm saying. The kidnappers knew that he has called Ami.
Nah, lie, I don't believe you.
I'm not talking about someone that.
How did they know?
This is what I was involved in. I was the one that called the police. I called the police bureau of that state by myself to connect the person to the DPO who was helpless. Guess what? They know where they are. The local vigilantes know where they are. The police know where they are, but they cannot go. The only people that can go is the army. When we called the army said they are not interested. The kidnappers knew that we have called the army. You cannot fight insecurity by coming to social media to be lying. When you work and there's results, the work will speak for himself. The truth about the insecurity in the north, how do we know? Not by the Nigerian government, not by the army, by journalists that went to do the real work of investigating. That's how we know. That's how unsincere this government is. Imagine if the United States government is lying to their people about terrorism going on in their corner. Whether that governor will have not gone, whether that chief of army staff will have not resigned today. Somebody died in Osun State. 10 people died in Osun State. The CP was not sacked. He's still there. We do not have responsible people and those M of affairs in security. Those people have become politicians. You can't be a military man, you can't be there and be playing politics. That's what they are doing. So somebody say you have dealt with, he has come up again and is taxing the people. And this is exactly what happened all over those places, northeast, northwest. People are suffering, are going through a lot. And I don't know where the president is, the commander-in-chief. Who should we call it? I don't know if it's in France or Belgium. I'm sure it's not in the country.
Back now. They said he's back. They said he's back.
Oh, it's back. Glory, we give glory to God for that. Let him take action and stop joking around. These guys are joking around and they are playing with the life of people. Normally, these people should be sacked for their failure. That is it. So they are not responsible. I just have so much pity for those people living there because we are feeling their pain, but we cannot understand it. Do you know the number of people that have been displaced in the northeast and the northwest? Displaced from their farm, displaced from their resources, displaced from their family land. Because the government decides to be irresponsible. It is very sad.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Who have been rehabilitated, will he not go into it? Will he not become somebody who has repented and will be reintegrated into the society? So long as we have a system that does not punish a crime, these people will not stop. I've told you the other day that somebody I know was kidnapped and they paid ransom, but the police will come out and tell you no ransom was paid. If they have to come to the media, whether electronic, whether print media, whether social media, come and tell Nigerians the true situation of things.
All right, thank you.
All the propaganda on the media space should end.
Thank you. Comrade Ayo, please, would you like to chime in on that very quickly?
Very sad. to portray what Prince just said, a colleague, a friend was kidnapped. I tried helping through the process, the police and all that. The police were powerless. They couldn't do anything. They couldn't go. But he had a source in the army, and the source in the army called the army central in that location. He said they cannot go. Guess what? Just after that conversation had concluded, the kidnappers called and told him, "You dey call me Abi?" I hope you understand what I'm saying. The kidnappers knew that he has called Ami.
Nah, lie. I don't believe you.
I'm not talking about someone that.
How did they know?
This is what I was involved in. I was the one that called the police. I called the police bureau of that state by myself to connect the person to the DPO who was helpless. Guess what? They know where they are. The local vigilantes know where they are. The police know where they are, but they cannot go. The only people that can go is the army. When we called the army said they are not interested. The kidnappers knew that we have called the army. You cannot fight insecurity by coming to social media to be lying. When you work and there's results, the work will speak for himself. The truth about the insecurity in the north, how do we know? Not by Nigeria government.
After 32 years, Babangida finally confirmed that MKO Abiola won the June 12 elections. He regretted annulling the elections. He said he would have done things differently if he had a second chance. And there was a subtle attempt to blame Sani Abacha, a dead man, for the annulment of June 12 elections. Apparently, he was trying to say he was under pressure. It was a very pathetic sight, however. Pa Ayo Adebanjo and Pa Ike Clark died in their late 90s. They were looking very healthy, looking very strong. But Babangida, not up to 90, was looking very pathetic. He looks frail, and he aptly represents the futility of power, futility of riches, futility of dictatorship. He looked so vulnerable, particularly when the people that were driven into exile, one of them, Senator Bola Tinubu, then is now the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Now, I remember that before he stepped aside, now I was already a medical doctor, so I know what I'm talking about. Before he stepped aside, he said that the future of the country was in their hands. But he did not realize that he himself is in the hands of God. Apart from money and properties What did Babangida really gain from power? He lost his beautiful wife. He lost. Look at him there. I saw his son behind him. Look at him. Is he proud of this country? Is he having the best of this country? His state, Niger State, a great percentage of it has been taken over by bandits. Niger State, that Peter Obi says can feed the whole of Nigeria, has been overrun by bandits, several local government areas. I remember in those days when we used to drive from Abuja to Mina with his house up the hill and all that. You can't drive that road at night again between Abuja and Mina. I remember I passed that road midnight, 1 a.m. Today, the country that he had an opportunity to give the right direction to is a shadow of itself. What did Babangida really gain from power? He executed some of his best friends, including Mama Vasta, that the whole world pleaded for. He cowardly nullified the fairest and most credible election in the history of this country. Cowardly. He had an opportunity to make history. He messed it up. Abiola was a very good friend of his, but he died in detention because of his mandate that he won. June 12 election that he won. I remember what it took us to vote that time. Babangida set the nation backwards very many years backwards. And some other people in that room where they were gathered helped to set us further backwards. And I know the lives that were lost during the June 12 protests. I know how many government properties were burnt during June 12 protests. I know how much Babangida spent in building SDP secretariat and NRC secretariats for the parties. 2 buildings each, all over the country. All over the country. The one in Ughelli, one is in the GRA, one is in along the Ughelli-Patani Road. Some of them are wasting all over the country. 774 times 2 secretariats. And then you nullify the elections. These people don't have value for this nation. They don't have value for the electoral process. They don't have value for laws. That is treasonable. In decent societies, he should have been in prison. He was the book, I've not seen it, but the reviewer said that the summary of the results was an appendix in the back of the book. What are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to achieve? You had an opportunity to put this nation aright. Now, lives were lost. Abiola died. Properties were destroyed. He started the structural adjustment program that gradually led to the devaluation of our naira to where we are now. That stupidity was built upon by others, and we are where we are today. I don't want to think that it was a regional agenda that did not want Abiola to become president, just as a regional agenda and an oligarchic agenda happened in 2023 elections. We will come to that. So, for me, he described himself as an evil genius, but God outsmarted him. Now, that gathering of the so-called who is who in Nigeria is a gathering of those who failed to take the right decisions to set this nation on the right path. People like Gowon and a host of others, they had opportunities to set this nation. Look at Malaysia, look at Singapore, look at South Korea that we're giving money to. They've gone far, we're still wallowing in darkness. This is not public power supply. This is solar energy. So we're still wallowing in darkness. Indicators of development very poor, and they sat down.
So guys, like you can see, many Nigerians are so angry, looking at the way IBB waited for more than 30 years to come and start saying all what he's saying today. He is recognizing that the election that was held, where Abiola won, was a credible election. And guess who oversaw that election was an Igbo man, An Igbo man was the election INEC chairman as at that time. And he ensured that this election will be free and fair, and that election ended up being free and fair. But guess what? The North annulled it. They annulled it for their own selfish interests. They annulled it because a Yoruba man won. They annulled it because they believe that the North is born to rule, while the South is born to be slaves. That's just the interpretation of what we have seen. This one is coming out now to say all what he's saying. People are saying, why now? Why now, when so many lives were taken away? Where the hatred we are having today, inability to have good leaders. So you can imagine if Abiola had become the president and had done the reforms, because Abiola was seen as a patriotic leader who just wanted Nigeria to move to the right, in the right direction. You can imagine if Abiola was to rule Nigeria as at that time, by now we would have had a Nigeria that would have moved beyond where we are today. But because the North believes that they are born to rule, while the South is born to be enslaved by the North. So guys, in a nutshell, you can imagine what would have become of Nigeria should the June 12th election not be cancelled. You can imagine Nigeria would have moved beyond where we are today. But we are here because some people felt, how can it be? How can Abiola take over? You know, how can he take over? And they were still nursing. He was a military leader, and he still wanted to retain power as a military leader. He wanted to transit from being a military man to a civilian man, like Buhari did. Buhari told us he has repented. He has converted from, you know, being a military ruler to a civilian ruler, to a democratic ruler. But we saw what happened under the leadership of Buhari. It is under Buhari that Tokado, or all those things they use to fight terror in the North, they will send them to the Southeast. In the name of they are looking for IPOB members, they are looking for the Southeasterners. And we saw the free hand that Hope Uzodinma gave them in Imo State that led to the buying of so many Imo youths. So what we are just trying to say is that most times Nigeria end up having only leaders that are so self-centered. You can imagine IBB now making this confession because he didn't want a southern leader to be the one to be in charge. He wanted himself to transit from being a military leader to a democratically elected leader. And he was doing it gradually without knowing how to just switch. But guess what? When this election now held, he didn't have any option than to cancel it. That led to all kinds of commotion in this country. And now he's coming to tell us that, yes, that the election was free and fair, and that this and that, there was so much pressure on him to annul the election. Pressure from who? From the North. So you can imagine that Nigeria has suffered a lot. Nigeria has suffered a lot. Because you can't tell me that it was the Southerners that were telling you not to allow Abiola to rule. He said there were a lot of pressure on him that led to the annulment of that election. And you decided to do the bidding of people and not the bidding of Nigerians. We all saw what. So guys, like you can see, many Nigerians are so angry, you know, looking at the way IBB waited for more than 30 years to come and start saying all what he's saying today. He is recognizing that the election that was held, you know, where Abiola won, was a credible election. And guess who oversaw that election was an Igbo man, you know. An Igbo man was the election INEC chairman as at that time. And he ensured that this election will be free and fair. And that election ended up being free and fair. But guess what? The North annulled it. They annulled it for their own selfish interests. They annulled it because a Yoruba man won. They annulled it because they believe that the North is born to rule, while the South is born to be slaves. That's just the interpretation of what we have seen. This one is coming out now to say all what he's saying. People are saying, why now? Why now, when so many lives were taken away? Where the hatred we are having today, inability to have good leaders. So you can imagine if Abiola had become the president.